Welcome, riding buddies. We're back here once again with Brad Lewis. Welcome again, Bradbury. We're going to look at his 1981 KTM 250. The 250 in standard trim was a cracker.
Wasn't bad.
Wasn't a bad bike. This thing's even better again.
Yeah, this one's had some...
This one's been played. This is a typical Lewis Brothers Racing KTM, shall we say. But before we get underway, make sure you subscribe to John's Motorcycle Mania. It is a proven fact that subscribing to John's Motorcycle Mania will help your KTM clutch actually be able to be pulled in without a G-clamp. 81 250. So once again, the last of the twin shock frames.
Yeah.
1981, they've got, it's a carryover engine. It's not a new engine.
Ah, yes, that's correct. So the early vintage engines, I might have seen the video that John's done of the we Red Tank 74 250. So that engine shares components with the 125, 175 and 400. So the cases and so forth were all basically all of the same. They carried that through to the end of 79, and the 79 420 was the first breakout of the new engine. They loved that old engine, but they wanted something that looked, shall we say, not prehistoric. So KTM's response was basically to take that crankshaft, that cylinder liner, piston, gearbox, the whole deal, wrap it up in a new set of castings, and while they're at it, fit up primary kickstart.
Yep.
That the early bikes didn't have as well. And that's basically what you have here. You have
Yeah.
the old engine, so the crankshaft's identical. You can take the engine out of 74 and you can put it straight in there. And they carried it right through to the water-cooled 250s of 83, 84, 85. Yeah, and even then it's still the same crankshaft, just with the lug for the water pump drive hanging off the end. So yeah, it's basically the vintage engine in a new look cylinder and head and a new look set of
Cases. Still running your normal chrome moly frame. Still a non-detachable subframe.
Yep.
Still drum brakes front and rear,
Yep.
which
Yep.
didn't work,
Yep.
shall we say, in 1981.
Yep.
But Brad,
Yep.
this is one of your race bikes.
I've attempted to hang on to it
A couple of times.
in my-
Normally Brad gets other people to race his bikes for
Yes,
him, but
yes,
but that's all right. But it's
my-
your race bike.
Yeah,
It's your race bike. So what have we done with this particular one?
Well, the emphasis on this one was I used to go to a lot of the acute Queensland vintage motocross, and they were on grass tracks, and you really need to be able to punch really quickly for 20 or 30 metres. I did a lot of work on this one, so it actually hits hard just off idle, and it jumps. It's not a fun bike to ride. It's actually a fucking pain in the ass to ride on a normal motocross track with jumps and humps and bumps, but on a grass track like that where it flows, oh, this thing's insane. It's like a really strong 125. Is the best way to describe it. I've actually gone out in practice on this in with the 85 500s, like the next class up, and it'll actually run in a straight line, no matter how long the straight is, with any 500, like a CR 500, KX 500. This thing will run with them.
Yeah.
For the entire length of the straight.
It's fast.
It's a quick motorcycle,
fast.
but it's not an easy motorcycle to ride.
Yeah. So what have you done? What's the trick?
What?
Obviously, it's got another Lewis Brothers Racing pipe on it that
Yep.
kindly put together by Darryl.
Yep, and fairly major changes to the cylinder porting and piston.
Lots of aluminium being removed and then replaced.
The floor seemed to have a lot of aluminium on the floor when I was done. Doesn't have a whole lot of bottom, right off the bottom.
Right off the bottom. It's just that little bit further.
Yeah, you won't take it into a trials event, no.
It's trials, what?
It's basically a road race 250s.
Yeah, it's more or less where it's at.
Is where it's at. Modified carburettor, to go with it. 38 Bing.
38 Bing on there at the moment.
With the ground slide, like more cutaway and all the usual things you have to do with a Bing to make them work really nice. But yeah, it'll sit there and idle and bling bling bling. But if you're not careful, you hit it too hard out of a turn, it'll blubber like an old Elsinore used to.
Oh right.
Yeah, like it's got a lot of inlet port timing.
Yeah.
Probably too much for a piston port. I did a lot of playing to get to that level. I incrementally ground pistons.
Front end on this?
Yamaha. Yeah. Well, we were attempting to make it turn in a little better, and what we wanted was a little bit more dive under, so after you've dived under your brakes, so it didn't come up as much. That the Serianis, they tended to, when you let your brake lever go, they tended to
stretch out,
and you'd lose all faith in your front end. So we wanted something that stayed down a little, and we just had this front end laying around out of an IT 250 or something, whatever it was, and it's actually not as strong as, to believe it or not, the twin litre is the 495 will outbrake that.
Yeah, but your 495 front brake,
it's been twerked.
It's heavily modified, shall we say, to make it work.
Yeah.
and it works.
It stops. Yeah.
But Yamaha brakes were traditionally Yamaha, as far as I'm concerned, built the best drum brake in the business.
Absolutely, that's what appealed to me about putting it in there. But yeah, I wasn't all that, and I'm still not all that overfussed with it. It's good enough.
It works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let it settle into the turn.
Yeah,
That's what
and it achieved what you wanted it to achieve.
in conjunction with the clamp setup.
Yep.
Yeah. With that head stem angle and so forth, it just seems to. They're actually about 20 mil lower overall length as well, so the whole front end is down 20 mil to start with.
Yeah, and that would work well with the seat height, because we know what these things were like with seat height. I think they were designed for guys that were around 7 foot tall.
Yes, Jake Van Veldhoven.
They just, they've always got me these early 80s KDM, late 70s, early 80s KDMs.
Yeah.
The seat height, you bring your own step chair.
The good part about them was that once you're on the move, the foot peg to seat height relationship wasn't so bad. The transition from sitting to standing, was relatively easy. There are a lot of other bikes out there that's not. You sit more in them, and it's a lot more effort on your calves. You're just doing that transition from sitting to standing.
Yeah. With this Yamaha front end on this as well, if you've never ridden one of these early KDMs, like they're not like KDMs these days where you ride a KDM, you ride a Honda,
they feel
pretty much the same.
Yeah.
When you ride these old KDMs,
bikes, they're different.
It's like you're jumping off a motorcycle and you're jumping on a tractor. They are that different. They have got their own distinct feel about them.
Yeah.
In the way your body position is, you've got to change your whole body. You've got to change the way you ride the bike completely to adapt to the KTM feel. But going with this front end because it's got the Yamaha triple clamps, the Yamaha forks, was that enough to make it feel more like a Jap bike, or is it still very KTM-ish?
Oh no, it just feels like the 495, but weighing less. So it carries its weight down nicely, like it's reasonably centralised. It's not a top heavy feel like a HL type bike that wants to tip over. It doesn't do that. It plonks into turns nice now. Like you can come over, jump, and lay it in straight in. Whereas with the previous front end there, as soon as you land it, it will want to come back out, and you're trying to turn in, and you just.
Yeah, I always found when I used to ride your KDMs back
a long time ago. Yes, that was the.
They were a flat corner bike.
Yes.
They were not a rut bike.
No, correct.
They did not like ruts. Because they would tend to want to, no matter how far you looked ahead and how good your technique was, they want to push.
Yeah, well, that's your losing faith in your front.
Yeah.
Darryl calls it feeling planted.
Yes, yeah, it is.
He says it just doesn't feel as planted as it should.
The Yamaha front end actually has changed its characteristics.
A little.
A little.
Yeah. I've got an identical sister bike that's still running a standard engine, and it feels clumsier.
Yeah. They just want to push. They don't want to turn. They're happy going in a straight line.
Yep. Still feels pretty good to trail ride and your VTR, your vintage trail rides and stuff. And being a standard engine, it's quite pleasant. You can plonk up hills and up creek beds and all that sort of caper.
But once you start trying to push it, that's when the wheels fall off.
It doesn't. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
And I know with KDM, it's funny. The sister bike that we had, we actually were out at a motocross track one day, and we decided we'd just, for the hell of it, we'd change shocks. And it appeared that even as late as the very last version of the twin shock frame, before they went single shock, they were still fooling around with where they were putting the top shock bolt, because when we took the shocks off that one and put on this one, that rear end was rubbish, and so was the other one.
Oh, it just didn't match.
No, and then you get really carefully and have a look with a really accurate measuring device. Yeah, we're actually fooling around with the top shock mount position.
They are one of the biggest motorcycle manufacturers in the world now. But back in these days, they were still a beta company, small,
yes, exactly,
customizable, and you and I have spoken about this many times over the years, and you go, yeah, that's the same bike, but it's not the same.
Bike, yes.
They did strange things. They go down the production line and go, oh, our factory guys have found this. Okay, put it on the bike.
By Tuesday, it's in production.
Yeah.
If they're at let's say the Swedish Grand Prix on a Sunday, and they tweaked around and they found an improvement, typically by Tuesday
on the bike.
It's going down the production line.
Yeah.
And so by 12 months of development, that was the hardest thing when we started racing vintage motocross, and we'd bump into scrutineers from different states every year, was trying to get the fact that a 74 KDM isn't just a 74 KDM.
No.
You know? And
I remember an argument which I actually
Was
got
a part
involved with one year, and that it didn't end bad. It just didn't end right.
End right, yeah.
And it's just because
they will keep developing. So an RM125 for the entire year, or a CR250 for the entire 86 year, they're all identical.
yeah.
Okay.
Or
Not so with KDM in that era.
yeah, or like we'll say the YZ125, and then they bought out the YZ125X, but it was a completely different model designation. Where this, it's a KDM, it's an 81 KDM 250. It's still an 81 KDM 250. There's no model change, but it's slightly different.
I remember reading an Australian dirt bike test, I think about 84. Jeff Eldridge was doing a test, and he tested one early, a pre-prototype 83 era 250. And then right near the end of the year, Bert supplied him another one to test, and he said, I think the opening line was something along the lines of, yes, it's still the same looking motorcycle as one we tested early in the year, and there's only three things that are the same, and these are the three things.
Yeah, they just changed.
They just changed everything, but it still looked the same.
It's still the same bike.
Yeah, and it's still called an 84 250, for example. So
Yeah.
they were just tweaking all along.
They just kept evolving, changing, doing updates,
Yes.
all the way through, which makes it hard, but it's pretty cool. So that's been a look at Brad's modified 81 KDM 250. Great little bike. Still fairly competitive in its class. It's competitive in its class.
If you can hang on to it.
If you can hang on to it. So thank you, Brad, for the look at your 81 KDM 250. If you haven't subscribed to John's Motorcycle Mania, make sure you do that, and we will catch you next time.